we are presenting session 1, the effects and prevention of elder abuse. And what we'd like to do is first show a 4-minute promotion called The Guardian. Amy, would you please start that?
It's a small little town, and they all know what's going on.
This is corruption at so many levels.
There's more to this than meets the eye. It's master investigation.
They don't play fair at all. And that's what I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to fight.
I want people to know it can happen to you. Something was wrong. And my gut told me somebody's who it is, but somebody took my parents.
I mean, how do you react when you've been told that in Las Vegas, the elderly are being systematically and fraudulently declared as incompetent and forced into guardianship? All of a sudden and without warning, their lives, their finances, and their health care are being controlled by a private guardian appointed by the family court that's supposed to protect them.
Just like that. My whole life was shattered.
Been on record that it's $47 trillion are about to change hands from the elderly to their children.
When somebody is given guardianship of you by the court, become that person.
And then have access to all of their bank accounts, all of their retirement funds.
Stocks, bonds, will, everything.
Instead of wealth passing down through the generations of families, we're seeing wealth passed down through the guardian.
Someone could knock on my door, take me away, and walk off with everything that I own.
They took my house, they took my car, they took $41,000 out of my bank account.
They stole everything. Everything was empty.
My mom is not dead. They were auctioning off her clothes.
That is so scary.
It's an absolute conspiracy. Perfect example of what a conspiracy. One or two people could not do this on their own. This is racketeering.
This is a multi-million-dollar business in which everyone's getting a piece of it. Lawyers, private guardians, home health agencies.
Out with her. I said, I'm not going. I started crying. I said, I'm not going anywhere. Who are you?
I literally was kidnapped from my drug before I got to a hospital. Asked them. They're on the 6th floor in the psych ward.
They hold me criminal.
This is truth that's stranger than authorities. We have governed. It's the.
As soon as my mother became a ward of the state, all her health issues started up. It's the industry of slow death. I can't explain how they do it because it's illegal, but they do it.
Don't you know this is the United States of America, that people have their civil and constitutional rights?
And you guys fucking killed my mother.
And I can think to myself, well, if that was my story, which it isn't, how would I react? Would I be able to control? Be in prison right now that it had happened.
Touch my mother and you move her, I'm going to take the bat and I'm going to beat the hell out of you.
Got to keep the light shining on the people that are being taken.
People go in, corpses come out. I was hoping so much that her to come home.
Everything they've been doing for the last 30 years is about to be exposed.
Be stopped. It must be revealed, and it must be revealed today.
The perpetrators are starting to be cornered, and they're starting to act strange.
Scarier and scarier. What's going on? We got to fix it.
We're going to get this mess cleaned up.
Reveal this.
So this gives us all information on how this atrocity is going on not just in Las Vegas, but around the world. I am so grateful that I received a grant from United Lutheran Church of Oakland to be able to present information regarding elder abuse to the Oakland and San Francisco community. And I've had a partner with Alameda County Care Alliance since I received this grant, and I'm so grateful and thankful that they've been a partner through this whole process. Actually, I see Reverend Cynthia Perliat that has joined us, and she's the executive director of the Alameda County Care Alliance. Welcome, welcome. I also would like to thank our other partner for this session one, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, the San Francisco chapter, which I am a member. So welcome to our president, Maxine Hickman. I see you're here on the call as well. Thank you. I would like to introduce our presenters for this session. Our first presenter will be Terry Williams, and she specializes in legal research relating to elder, family, and social phenomena. As a former legal assistant and real estate agent, Ms. Williams discovered a criminal enterprise running through the courts of Las Vegas, operating under the guise of legitimate guardianship. Our next presenters will be Art and Narissa Harris. They are a married couple who are the co-founders of Culture First Family Therapy and Training Services Incorporated. They are both licensed marriage and family therapists with nearly 30 years of combined experience in helping others navigate through society. The next presenter will be Jorick Gaines. He has over 35 years financial industry experience and has a holistic one-stop approach to working with small business owners and families from every income level. He holds insurance licenses, life and health, and property and casualty in multiple states, and is a nationally registered investment advisor representative. Thank you, panelists. We have a Q&A period. After our second presenter, which is Art and Narissa Harris, we will have questions for them. And the way you do questions is you go to the chat, and if you have questions for them during their presentation, please click chat, and then you can put your question there. Something has come up with their schedule and they have to leave after their Q&A period. If you have any questions for other presenters, you can also put them all in chat, and we'll, depending on the time, we have about 15 minutes, hopefully, to for them to answer those questions. Fantastic. So at this time, I would like to welcome our first presenter, Terry Williams.
Good morning, audience, and everybody that's here. Thank you so much, Ms. Warren. You're absolutely beautiful, and I appreciate the fact that you keep trying to spread this word. And I'm happy to be here. I just wanted to ask a question because I just am trying to understand where my audience is with this subject matter. How many of you have seen the movie The Guardians documentary? Can I just get a show of hands or a high five or something? Okay, great. Many of you have not seen this movie, and a lot of what I'm going to say might not make a lot of sense, but once you see it, and I'm not promoting it just because I have a small part in it, this is the best visual that outlines, illustrates a type of fraud that is literally stealing the lives and wealth of seniors that's been going on for at least the last 40 years. I discovered it in Vegas. It seems to have grown legs and gone everywhere, but essentially seniors or families that have a certain threshold of wealth seem to come to the attention of the most sophisticated predators I've ever seen in my life. So if you haven't seen the movie, I would encourage you to see it. It is available on Amazon Prime. I believe it's free. There's some kind of promotion, but you simply have to type in the whole title, The Guardians Documentary, and you can find it there. It's like an hour, 47 minutes worth of information that I think everybody that's ever played by the rules and managed to put together more than $2 in savings should see. Moving forward, I will just simply describe what happens in this scenario. Let's just say you're a married couple, you guys have managed to buy a home, you have some savings, you have life insurance, you have investments, you have done well for yourself under the American standard. Doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter, really what you came from, only that you are sitting in a position of some kind of wealth. You could go to the hospital and you might have symptoms of a cold or the flu or something like that. But what essentially was happening in Vegas was there were a network of healthcare professionals that, of course, have the first access to your records, your financial records, your everything. And if you met the financial threshold, and a lot of times our insurance will pretty much indicate our level of financial security. So those with gold standard insurance, you already know they have money. But literally, the phone was being picked up and certain healthcare professionals were giving a heads up to certain people called guardians or conservators. And I'm not speculating when I say they were literally saying, I got one, and inviting total strangers into the lives of people that, but for their cold symptoms, never would have been in a healthcare facility. Long story short, in a matter of what seemed like hours or days, there would be a scenario written up in the form of a legal pleading and presented to a court to deem these targets incompetent. The document was filed with the court, unbeknownst to the targets, and the perpetrators walked out with an order giving them global access to financial records, health records, historical, current, access to your safe deposit boxes, and all the while the original targets never knew this had happened. Long story short, the design of this was meant to assure that the perpetrators had all the knowledge and all the medical records that could be then used against the target to preserve their wealth. Only it was the perpetrators that wanted to be in pure, total control of the spending or not spending of that wealth. And 9 times out of 10, the game was to liquidate everything you had, turn it into cash, and invest it with their chosen investors. I've seen many of the targets, once they were deemed incompetent, once they had gone home from whatever medical facility they visited, they were collected at one point in time once the perpetrators had all their ducks in a row and they were escorted to either a psych ward, assisted living facility, or other institution, simply meant to hold them while the perpetrators went about conducting this financial scam. And so if you can imagine just opening your door to strangers one day and somebody coming in and saying, I'm your guardian and I basically need to take you out of your home. I'm going to put you in a facility for a little while and have you psychologically evaluated, and you having absolutely no clue where this is coming from, not being able to ask a single question, see a single document. This is what has been going on for 40 years. And simply by isolating the targets, the stories never really got out. Now they're starting to come out, and I pray that each and every one of you, after COVID subsides, will jump on this movement, help grow it, because we were making pretty good gains before COVID, and right now we just kind of have to be still, if you will. But yeah, I invite you to look at the film. I will sound a lot more with it than I do, because I know what I'm saying is absolutely unbelievable. And if you have any questions whatsoever, I will post my email address, and feel free to reach out and talk to me. But I can't cover everything in 10 or 15 minutes. I'm really, really sorry. I hope that you all were able to hear the demo of the movie. I had a little trouble hearing it. And if you weren't able to hear it, maybe if we have time later, we could play it again, just at a louder volume. For those of you that know someone or are currently, I guess, considered either on the cusp of being referred to as an elder person, it is very important that you understand what a mini mental examination is. Have any of you ever heard of that term? Okay. Well, essentially, if anybody shows up, and sometimes this is actually happening in your regular yearly physical, people are giving you a screening concerning your cognitive status. Mini mental is a series of questions originally designed to kind of address whether you have any kind of recognizable cognitive failure or hardship or struggle. You can look it up on, Google for all intents and purposes, and you could do the research. But I will also post a link in the chat that I found very interesting. It goes through the history of this mini mental exam, and something called serial sevens is mentioned, and that's the ability to count backward from 100 by sevens. So those of you that can do that, good for you. Personally, I don't even think I can do that, and I don't have any issues right now, to be quite honest. But for those of you that are interested in just being up on it, I encourage you to learn to count backward from 100 by sevens. Just do it, just to know how to do it. But again, I will post the link as soon as I get it, and it probably will be during somebody else's time, so I apologize. But long story short, there is a little known threat to people that have made it well in this life and are comfortable in their living, and you would never really see it coming. And I am saddened and sickened, but appreciative that I was able to discover this and articulate it. And I hope that I've helped you all learn a little something. But really, if you want to see this thing in action, please see that movie. And so if there are any questions, I will take them because I just don't want to be greedy here and take up too much time.
Thank you, Terry. What we're going to do is have questions and answers for you at the end.
Okay.
The only questions and answers that we'll have during the presentation is from Art and Narissa Harris. Thank you for your presentation, Terry.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
Very informative. So please, Narissa and Terry.
Hi. Like Antoinette told everyone, we're Art and Narissa, co-founders of Culture First Family Therapy and Training Services. And we'll just get a little bit into the elder abuse topic today, and my husband will share what we'll be going over. And we have our baby here with us, so bear with us. It is COVID, so we are childcare. So,
right. And so, right, we are therapists. I'm also a school psychologist, and I do a lot of cognitive assessments, so I can spend a little bit talking about executive functioning also. But also, we represent the Bay Area chapter of Black Psychologists, which is a chapter of the National Association of Black Psychologists. And so within ABPSI, we pay a lot of respect to our elders because we know we come from a people where the elders were once the chiefs. The elders were who we sought for counsel. And we know in this weird world that we're in now, sometimes the baby is put before the elder. And so we pay respect to our elders, and we had no problem with jumping in for a few minutes to show some respect and give some information on this subject. And so in this topic, we'll talk about, of course, the types of elder abuse. We'll look at risk factors, not just of that elderly person who may be a victim of abuse, but we'll also talk a little bit about the caregiver who sometimes becomes the perpetrator or other abusive situations, because it's a whole family issue when an elderly person is being taken advantage of in any way. And so we'll jump right into it, and then please post your questions and we'll try to answer them as best as we can. Also, we are getting a lot of this information from the CDC website, who has a lot of information on elder abuse. And we're also got a lot of information from APA, which is the American Psychological Association. And we're also taking in case studies that we got just from working with the elderly population. So
exactly. And then we'll also, in addition to that, talk about protective factors too. So there's 7 types of elder abuse that takes place. And I'll go through these pretty quickly because they're kind of self-explanatory. But there's the physical abuse, which is kind of like the use of force that might result in bodily harm or injury. So that could be things like excessive roughness or hitting, just things along those levels that result in physical abuse. Sexual abuse is just any non-consensual sexual contact of any kind with an elderly person. There's the emotional abuse aspect, which is the 3rd type of abuse. So that's just inflicting like anguish and pain, verbally or non-verbally, to an elderly person. So that can be things like name calling, criticizing, ignoring the elderly person, even withholding things like emotional support or love. There's the financial and material exploitation, which a lot of the clip from The Guardian, showed. So again, that's like the illegal or improper use of the funds of an elderly person. So that could be things like using their money not for what it's allotted for, not for their bills, maybe not giving them their change back when going to the store, even things such as like having people stay within their property without their permission, forging checks. The list can go on with financial and material abuse. Neglect is the refusal to take care of them and to take care and to honor your responsibility as a caregiver, right? So just not taking care of an elderly person, not feeding them properly or at all, not bathing them, not administering their medication. These are all forms of neglect. abandonment, which is basically just leaving the elderly person. If you are the custodian of this elderly person and you abandon them and don't take care of them, that is a form of abuse. And then there's the self-neglect that takes place with elders. So that's when an elderly person themselves are behaving in ways that are threatening to themselves. And a lot of times we see that when the mental decline takes place with things such as Alzheimer's or dementia, where an elderly person can't really fend for themselves because of the decline of the mental health.
Right. And then there's like other risk factors that you want to consider with the elderly person and the caregiver. But when we talk about the elderly person, like a lot of the major risk factors are related around you're up at an age and there might be other conditions related to health or mental health that may rely you to depend on others. Like executive functioning is one of the things that we assess for when we do cognitive assessments. But you don't need a psychologist to do an assessment to know, man, there's difficulty with planning and organizing. You know, it might not be as sharp as it used to be in some people, and it's not in all. But in some cases, depending on what you've been through up to the time you become a senior citizen, you may have more deficits in the ability to plan and organize. Other conditions common to elderly include being able to sometimes forget what was being, what you're trying to remember, sometimes being able to remember words, sometimes being able to pronounce words, vision, walking, motor. These are all factors that may cause you to depend on those around you to help you just a little bit more. And so there's also risk factors of the caregiver you want to consider, because that's very important. You see, with the caregiver, you're more likely to engage in abuse if you have your own mental health diagnosis. If there's alcohol abuse involved, there's a higher likelihood of abuse to be perpetrated. If there's executive functioning in that caregiver, because sometimes that caregiver isn't too much younger than the person they're helping, sometimes depending on what's going on, right? And if there's an anger problem or higher levels of hostility in that person, they're always at risk of more abuse. And so, and also a lack of support. So if you have one person or one child or one grandchild taking care of an elderly person and everybody is not around, then there's more isolation and then there's more stress on that person. And so that whole system is just at a greater risk of abusers.
Right. And again, like my husband is saying, some of the risk factors, again, for the elderly is just being really dependent upon these caregivers. And I think another thing that's important is the lack of support that some elderly have. So if you don't have this, if the elderly person doesn't have social support or professional support or even family support, that can put them at more risk of being abused, because there's less checking in, there's less accountability on the person caring for the elderly. And so when going really quickly into protective factors, it's really just the opposite of what we've talked about, and just putting some emphasis on some things. And so risk protective factors for elderly, piggybacking on what I just said, is having adequate support, social, professional, and family. And so making sure that they have friends, family friends that check on them, that talk to them, that seek them out to see how they're doing. Professional support could include like the facility that they're in, if they're in a facility, or if they have a social worker assigned to the case, making sure that that person is following up with them and checking in with them. And more so adequate monitoring. And so it's important that with these social supports, both the elderly are being checked in with and the caregiver, because they need to know and be able to assess if this caregiver is burnt out, if they need some respite, if they need more support, more training in certain areas, and also making sure when checking in with the elderly that that's done sometimes individually to make sure that the elderly person feels safe to express what's going on. And if a social worker is involved and there's mental decline, this social worker can even assess if the person is being abused or if things don't seem to be matching up, even if the elderly person is not able to express what's going on. So it's really important to have a lot of social, professional and family support around. And then for the caregiver, just making sure that they have adequate training, adequate support, access to respite if they need it, because they do need a break as well sometimes, and to make sure that they're able to tap into their coping skills. It's a very stressful thing to take care of somebody, and a lot of times caregivers end up being family members. And so there's just this connection of wanting to make sure everything is right, but also being tired and burnt out as well. And so we also just need to check in with the caregivers and make sure that they're coping and taking care of themselves.
Right, and I want to provide 2 brief case studies from clients that I've served. The first one, 15 years ago, which just happened to be my very first client as a therapist. I was in graduate school with a video up, being monitored by a veteran psychologist. And my first case was a senior citizen man who was, I guess he was on that cusp. He was like 66, 67, so he was still highly functional, but he was a little bit older and he was taken advantage of by a younger woman. And so, and with that, it came with a lot of, he was dealing with this pride because he thought that this younger person really loved him, and she was really taking advantage of him financially. And after she drained all that she could of him, she disappeared. And what happened in his situation was, one, he did not have a support system around him. Like, his kids weren't in the area. He kind of lived on his own in a boat. He really wasn't in any social groups. And so he came across this woman who saw him as a target, and she took advantage of him. And so there's a lot of mixed feelings that came with that. And so I think in his situation, something that could have helped him is if he would have had resources around him, whether it's a group, a peer group, family, just some people checking in on him to making sure that he wasn't being taken advantage of. And those are the things you have to think of when you have an elderly person in your life that might start dating somebody. It could be the same age or they could be a lot younger. You just want to pay attention, because sometimes people are taken advantage of financially and don't even realize until it's too late. And then I'll fast forward to another case, a current case that I have right now, where I have a grandmother who is a great woman who is taking care of a grandchild with some behavioral issues, a lot of behavioral issues. And also this grandmother has a history of being in domestic violence situations. So she has her own set of PTSD. She has her own set of mental health, depression and anxiety that she's working with her own counselor. And in this case, she's at risk of not just abusing that child, but also of her being taken advantage of by this child. You see, it's not always a grown person that's abusing the elderly. Sometimes they're taking care of a child with some behavior problems, like a teenager, you know. But some protective factors that she has that my wife talked about earlier is that she has a family system who they come in every once in a while, they check in on grandma, they'll take the kid and talk with him, they'll assist with disciplining, they'll assist with just taking them and having them spend the night at another family member's home for a couple of days. They do certain things where she's not exposed and alone for too long. She also accesses mental health services, and she's complete. Her brain is sharp. She's not declining, but she is definitely stressed out. And so she uses her therapy. She uses my therapy that I give for the family and for the child, and she really accesses her support. And so we can check in on her and make sure that she's not being taken advantage of or harmed.
Right. So that's what we have to present for you guys.
Yeah, also, we want to remember, if you suspect elder abuse and you're a mandated reporter, that you definitely should report elder abuse. It doesn't mean that you're exposing the family, but it does mean you're having somebody just checking them out to make sure that the elderly person, and it's okay. That's mandated reporters. You have to report it, whether it's in the home or in a care facility.
Right. And just Google Adult Protective Services in whatever county you're in.
Looking at questions.
Thank you, Narissa and Art. At the end, we will post that information regarding on how to report elder abuse.
Okay.
Thank you for that valuable information. So we have a question, and it says, please give us more information on the studies you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation.
It says studies.
Like, just to clarify, do you mean where we got the information, or
what the results, I guess, of the studies? Yeah, I guess the studies were pertaining to elder abuse or abuse. And
well, it wasn't necessarily studies. It just is more so information. So if they're looking to see where to get that information, again, it's from the CDC. As well as APA, which is the American
Psychological Association. Yeah.
Is where that information comes from. So I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Well, I think they might also be talking about, when I talked about case studies.
Case studies.
And when I was talking about case studies, that's just term. Just talking about a client that I had. So it wasn't a study like in the lab. I was giving you guys a real life example of actually two clients that I served that one was abused as an elderly person, and then the other one is at risk, and we talked about those protective factors. So those aren't published anywhere because it's their private information, but I could share what I was able to share without identifying who they are.
Great. Thank you.
No problem.
So have there been studies on nationalities of people who are abused, elders who have been abused, the percent of those that are abused?
Oh yeah, there are studies out there. I remember taking an elder abuse class. I remember in graduate school, we had to go into extensive, we had to, wasn't it the journey of elderly psychology? There in that journal, there are case studies and studies on the elderly. There's all types of research done on elderly people from various things, from mental health to sexual health to abuse. There is a lot of research, but I suspect we're about to get a lot more because that baby boomer generation are now in this senior citizen class or on the cusp of it, and they've been followed since they were born, right? And so I suspect we're going to get a lot more studies out there also.
And we have found in the senior advocacy community that there is a high rate of elder abuse and children abuse during this COVID. Those reports are from Adult Protective Services and Child Protective Services as well. Thank you so much. And I know that you all have to leave for an unexpected matter. I appreciate you coming, and thank you for the valuable information that you have.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. So now we are going to have Jorick to come and with his presentation. And after Jorick, we will have Q&A. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Antoinette. Amy, could you make me the presenter or allow me to share my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. While she's doing that, again, my name is Jorick Gaines. I'm a financial educator, financial advisor with Transamerica Financial Advisors, and as Antoinette and you, I think you have the flyer, licensed in several states. This is my 25th year. Prior to that, and still I'm a California real estate broker. So I've been serving families since 1982, even though I'm only 42. You can do the math. I'm getting younger every day. So anyway, I'm going to talk today. Let me see if I can share this.
It's moving. It's just very, very slow.
As just real quick, you know, we talked about holistic planning. I just want to share this screen and say that, first of all, can you see that screen over there that says 7 money milestones? Yes? Can you hear me?
We can see it.
Okay, great. I just want to be sure. I did a whole presentation 2 weeks ago, and my screen wasn't showing, so I'm real conscious of that. We work with what we call 7 money milestones, and I'm not going to go through either one of these, but this is our holistic strategy to planning. The one we're going to focus on today is 7, protect your wealth. And of course, that refers to having your wills and trust in place. So I'm going to do a quick presentation on, let's see here, I'm going to stop that one. I'm going to do a quick presentation on living trust and just tell you the economics behind it. So, get that expanded, presentation mode. Simple wills and living trust. Seems my internet connection is a little slow. Everybody must be on for school today. What's going on? Okay. So probate. For those of you that are not familiar with probate, I think the audience is a mature audience here. So I think most of us, if not personally, have had a family member or have know firsthand how horrible it is to go through probate. Now, one thing I do want to say about living trust, there is nothing that can stop people that are committed to trying to commit fraud. That we live in a very litigious society, so anyone can sue you for anything, right or wrong, and you have to defend yourself. And the real sophisticated people know how to get around just about everything. So I'm not telling you that this will stop financial elder abuse. This is really about the financial part of it. And as we like to say, controlling your, let me see if this is something for me. I see the chat here, that's why I'm pausing. Make sure my, okay. Can't read it. But that won't stop people from trying to come after your assets if you have assets. And I think Jerry and everybody else will tell you, if you don't have the assets, you probably don't have to worry about that. You have to worry more about the elder abuse. But if you have assets, you have a home, you have investments, you have annuities, you have life insurance, there are people that will try to get your assets and make it their assets. So, but in preparing for that, doing something is better than doing nothing. So if you do not have well, even if you have a will, if you do not have a living trust and you have an estate in the state of California over $150,000, it is required to be probated, even if you have a will. A will is better than nothing, but it does not stop probate. So California probate is a legal proceeding that is used to wind up a person's legal and financial affairs after death. In other words, the court takes the position that they want to make sure that your assets go to who they are entitled to get, who's entitled to get them, I should say. So, let me just, oh, I'm not reading this chat, okay. Voice trouble. Okay. Let me know, can you still hear me okay? I'm just checking in. Got a chat said voice trouble. Good?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So California probate is the purpose of that is just to make sure that your heirs that are entitled to your financial assets and personal property, it goes to who it is supposed to go to. So in other words, if you don't have a will or a trust, then some judge or some court is going to decide who gets what you've worked all your life to have, and they are going to decide who gets it. So, do you need the probate? California probate is necessary when the decedent dies, testate, meaning with a will, or intestate without a will. Again, if you have an estate over $150,000. If you had a formal trust, then probate will not be necessary as long as the decedent's assets are held by the trust. One of the biggest mistakes people make is they set up a living trust, but they don't fund it, what we call fund it. The way you fund your trust is you have to transfer your assets into the trust. Now, there are some things that do not require to be transferred into a trust, and those are assets that have a beneficiary named, like insurance, some retirement plans, annuities, and that sort of thing, those sorts of items. So probate process is very costly and very time consuming, and it puts a drain on families. The probate process can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to complete. The length of the process depends on the size of the estate and whether there are unusual assets that require special attention. How do you avoid probate? As I said, you have a living trust. It helps you provide for your loved ones, even if you pass away while you're saving for your family, while you're saving your family from stress and expense of dealing with probate. Anybody that's ever been through probate for one of their loved ones, they can tell you it's no fun. While having a will is a good idea, it is still subject to probate upon your death, while a living trust is not. And I highly encourage everyone to get a living trust. Not here to sell today, but for those of you that are a little tech savvy, we have a digital version that is only $499. Attorneys may charge you anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 and up, depending on the complexity of the estate. So let's talk about if you don't have a living trust and the expenses that can go with that. So in California, there are several common and effective ways to avoid probate when it comes to passing on property or assets. Of course, if it's less than $150,000, as we talked about, you can have a revocable living trust, which means you can change it. A non-revocable living trust, which means once you put it in place, you can't change it. And then joint ownership of property, transfer on death. That says transfer of death, should say transfer of death, on death. Or payable on death, which means when you pass, you have named someone that's going to get that asset and there's no probate required. Now, if it goes to probate, lawyers and executors are entitled to get paid. Lawyers is statutory fees, which means you can't negotiate it. They are going to get paid, and every lawyer will tell you they would prefer people not have a living trust because they get paid a heck of a lot more money. Whereas, as I said earlier, a living trust might go through an attorney, a couple of grand to $3,000 maybe, again, depending on the complexity. Whereas, as you can see here, and I'll touch on it in a minute, what they make if you don't have a living trust. But both the executor and the attorney will be paid per California statutory fee schedule, as I'm about to go. An attorney could charge by the hour, usually a minimum of $350. I think that's a little low now. It might be more like $450 per hour or a flat fee. But most will want to go based on a percentage. You can get an idea of how high these fees are by looking at California's schedule. Now, for ordinary services, a lawyer or a lawyer/executor can collect. Now, let me clarify that. The attorney gets the same thing as the executor, because the executor basically has to do all of the work and deal with the family and all of the assets and get everything together. And so they're entitled to get paid. A lot of times, family members may waive that to help the family out. Most times they wish they hadn't. So using this system, well, I could go back if you didn't read that already. So the way the fees work, it's going to break it down by value of the estate in just a minute. But 4% of the first 100,000, 3% of the next 100, 2% of the next 800,000. And if you live in California in a decent area, especially here in the Bay Area, your state, and you own a home, your state is possibly almost like automatically over $1 million. And here's one thing to think about. Those fees are not net of debt. It is gross estate. So if you own $1 million house and you owe $1 million on that house, it's based on the $1 million. And then you can go up to again to 9 million and 15 million. So let's just move forward in the sake of time. So using the system, probating a typical California estate with a gross value of $500,000 would cost $13,000 in legal fees, which is a very large amount in my opinion, based on what legal work that has to be done. The state would be much better off if they could pay the lawyer by the hour. The fee chart is a breakdown of California statute. Now, going back, that's $13,000 to the executor as well if they choose to accept it. And trust me, a lot of people will. The fees chart is a quick breakdown of the California statutory compensation for attorneys and personal representatives in probate cases for different sizes of estates. It's important to stress, as I just said, both the attorney and the personal representative, executor, are paid under this statute. Thus, if both the attorney and the executor elect to receive a fee, the amount paid will double what I'm about to show you. So, if you have an estate valued, and I'm just going to jump since we're in California, to $500,000, as it said just a minute ago, that's $13,000 for the attorney and $13,000 for the executor. If you have $1 million estate, that means the attorneys get $23,000. Now, I guess you can see why they'd rather get $23,000 than $3,000 for a trust. And $1.5 million times 2, $28,000. $2 million, $33,000. And as you can see, it can get very, very expensive. The other issue with not having a living trust, I would say what my grandmother used to say, well, I'll say it, it can be nice. Your dirty laundry is aired. Everything you owned is public record. When I was selling real estate full time, I literally would go down to the courthouse, go to the probate department and request all of the recent probate files. And I'd go through the files and find out who had stocks and bonds, who owned real estate, what the probate attorney's name was, who the executive was, and I'd contact those people to try to see if they wanted to sell the property. But I could see everything that was going on financially in this person's life. It is literally out there for everyone and anyone to see. And if I knew it back then as a real estate broker, the scammers know it too. The people that are trying to get a hold of your assets and scam you, they are probably doing the same thing. I'd be willing to bet you they are. So let's see. So a little estate planning can help you avoid these fees. You can see a little estate planning doing life. We like to say it's controlling your wealth from your grave. Because if you get a good attorney and structure a good living trust, you can literally pass that on for generations. And this is a simple trust. There are lots of different types of trust, rabbi trust, generation skipping trust, and so on and so forth. They can get pretty sophisticated depending on the amount of assets that you have. So when I say $2,000 to $3,000, it could be more than that, but it's well worth the investment because you get to control your wealth from your grave. The other thing I highly recommend is don't just get a trust, put it in your safe deposit box, and no one knows you have it. The other thing, again, fund it. Make sure that the assets you have that you haven't designated a beneficiary on are given to someone, that it is put into the trust. Because I've had several, and right now we're at the lowest interest rates probably in history, and a lot of people are refinancing. Every lender requires you take the property out of the living trust, because technically when your property is in a living trust, the trust owns it. You don't own it, even though you are the trustee. You still have control, but for legal purposes, the trust owns it. So a lender will not loan to an entity, which is why they require you take the property out of the living trust before they'll refinance it or you can get a loan on it. What happens too frequently is the title company does not automatically put the property back into trust. without you paying them and instructing them to do so. So guess what? The property gets left outside of the trust, the owner dies, and because the property is not in the trust, then it has to be probated, which defeats the purpose. So make sure it's funded. Keep your eyes on that. If you'd like a review of your situation and your assets, I'm more than happy to offer that at no cost, no obligation. But that way you can control it. You can also say who's going to get what. You can decide whether you're going to be put on life support. You can just make all kinds of decisions in advance, whether you're going to be cremated or buried. Make those decisions, because when people are, you know, there's a saying in psychology, you can't argue with it, and all of us can relate. When your emotions are high, your intelligence level is very low. You're not thinking clearly. So the best thing you can do is try to remove yourself from that, or remove your family from that, and plan your estate in advance. All right, so the other thing I'm going to show you real quick, even if you don't have an estate value of $150,000, you should at least have a will. And you can find a simple will anywhere. I went online and found one. Let's see, it's called, I think I went to, let's see, up to share screen. I'm going to just show it to you really quick. It's a simple document. You can go online and guess what? It's absolutely free. Chat, let me just see here. Okay. I'm just about to the end, and this is the last thing I want to talk about. We'll take questions. So this is the California last will and testament, and everyone should have one. You should also have your advanced medical directives, your HIPAA forms. If you're a college member like I am, they request it, because if you go in the hospital, they want to know who makes the decisions and who they can talk to about your medical history, records, and procedures, because they can't just talk to everybody. They can't. The other thing is, for those of you that have kids, I almost forgot this. For those of you that have young children that live with you, or maybe you're still supporting, maybe they're in college, they're 20, 21 years old. I always ask parents this. I say, if your kid were to get in an accident and go in a coma and they needed to get some decisions, who's going to make the decisions? They say, well, I will. I'm their mom. I'm their dad. I said, well, actually, it's not that easy. They're of legal age. They're over 18. If you don't have your HIPAA forms and the other forms that are required, you cannot make decisions for those folks. And it creates a big problem. So I won't go into detail on that, but you can see a will. This is only 5 pages. It's fill in the blank. This is actually a PDF form, which you can fill in. This is, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom so you can see where I got it. Well, they don't have to go to the bottom. This was actually a company called eforms.com. E for electronic, forms.com. You can download this. I just did a search on Google. I mean, I have our digital format has them in there, but it was more work to find it. So you just simply fill in the blanks, who your personal representative is. Now, the other thing I recommend you do, don't name someone as your personal representative and not tell them. Make sure they know, because if something happens to you, they don't want to be surprised. And just get the form, fill it out, name your beneficiaries, and you might want, this is very simple. If you have some assets, if you have personal properties you want to leave people, I always recommend to older people, if they have stuff, jewelry, cars, money, I say, give it to them while you're alive. Watch them enjoy it. You know, don't wait till you die. You don't get any enjoyment out of that. So you can see it has to be notarized, and then give it to several people. Put it in a sealed envelope and say, oh, only open this when I pass, or some kind of instructions. Don't put it where no one can find it. So again, if you have questions, if you want to do a personal review about your assets, check beneficiaries. And that's the other thing. Review your other items that have beneficiaries. I talked to a person just 2 weeks ago, and one of their beneficiaries was deceased. That creates a legal problem. So with that, I will stop my talk and take any questions. I think we're going to go to questions and answers after that. Hopefully you got some benefit from that. Antoinette, all yours. Uh-oh, I can't hear you, Antoinette. Antoinette, you're on mute. You're muted. Bottom left microphone. Antoinette, can you hear me? Oh, can you guys still hear me? I see
Sure,
a
if I
question.
can hear you. It's Terry. I can hear you.
Okay, I see a question from Janie. I have a home. I was thinking of placing my son's name on the title to avoid children having trouble taking it over after my death. Is this the right thing to do? Let me give you a disclaimer. I am not an attorney. I should have said that at first. I'm a financial advisor. But let me tell you the problems with putting your kid's name on your property. A, they become co-owner. If they go out and get in a car accident and get sued, the attorneys look for money. If their name is on your property, it is their asset and they can sue and maybe have that property sold or lien it for damages. So I highly, highly recommend you get a living trust instead of putting. The other thing financially, especially if you're older and you have Prop 13 and your property taxes haven't gone up and so on and so forth. But what happens when you pass, you get what is called a step up in basis. In other words, if you paid $200,000 for a house that's now worth $1 million and you die, your kids inherit that property at $1 million. If they sell it, there's no capital gain. If they are on title, you die, and they inherit the property because of your death, they keep your basis. If they decide to sell it, the IRS looks at that sale as being the original cost being $200,000. They sell it, they've got an $800,000 gain, and then they have to pay capital gains taxes. So I highly recommend you get a living trust as opposed to putting your kids on it. And you know, there's all other kinds of things kids can do if their name is on your property. I know, I hear it all the time. My kid's good, they would never do that. Money changes people's perspectives. So do the best thing that's going to protect everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jorick, for a very informative presentation. My screen just froze and everyone was gone, but I'm back. So thanks to all of the presenters. This has been a wonderful, incredible session, sharing information regarding elder abuse, the effects and prevention of elder abuse. I want to announce that we're having session 2. You saw on your flyer that we would be having session 2. It's an elder abuse prevention training, and it's going to be on Friday, September 25th from 11 to 1 p.m. And it's going to be presented by the Alameda County Social Services Adult Protective Services. So you'll be getting flyers and it'll be posted, and please come. I would like to, now that we have a few minutes left, I'd like to ask our friend and co-sponsor of this event, Cynthia Perliet, the director of Alameda County Care Alliance, to please come and share what Alameda County Care Alliance is all about.
Thank you so much, Antoinette, and hello, everybody. I agree, it's been a wonderful session, 3 really strong presenters. Jorick, you gave us information that certainly I'm sure everybody on this Zoom call needed to hear. So thank you for just reminding us of some things that we've known and heard, but sometimes need a refresher course in. So as Antoinette said, I'm Reverend Cynthia Pirelli from the Alameda County Care Alliance. We are a faith-based movement. We partner with health systems and community organizations for the purpose of helping seniors and people that are dealing with advanced illnesses. It's a free service. We partner with organizations like Kaiser, other health entities, health foundations, but the idea is to the public, this service is completely free. So Jorick mentioned advanced care planning. We have care navigators that can work with you directly to, number one, help answer questions around advanced care planning, but also we can provide you for free an advanced directive, and they can help you fill that out. So it's really important, as was always already stated, to really think about who would speak for you if you can't speak for yourself. And spending time to think about who that individual might be, tremendously important. As people of color, I'm sure we all know that typically we don't really step up to the plate, frankly, when it comes to these important issues, and many times find ourselves in very challenging scenarios, emotional state, and when these kind of challenges happen, we're not prepared, we're ill-prepared. But what we think about and try to encourage others to think about is empowering yourself in advance. And so our organization, the ACCA, I am going to put my information in the chat here. And let's see, I got it in here, there we go. So you can have my email address as well as my cell phone and call me direct if you'd like for us to assign a care navigator to you or anyone in your family. You don't have to have an advanced illness to be a part of this program. You can also be a caregiver or someone that's supporting someone else that's dealing with a health challenge. Again, caregivers can also be enrolled. We honor all the HIPAA laws. We have to be certified to do this work. So the good news is that if your church is not connected with the ACCA, we'd be happy to talk to you about that as well. So a lot of opportunities there through the Alameda County Care Alliance. So that's all I'll say, but we really connect people to resources. We don't do hands-on care. We connect them to resources and then provide empowerment for them as well. So when they have to deal with various processes within the system, they can navigate much better. So Antoinette, I'm going to pass the baton back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for that report. So we're now at the end of our session, and I was thinking that we might have an opportunity to see the 4-minute promo again, but it is now 12:12, and I don't want to one up from your other schedules for this Friday. I want to thank you again, and hopefully I'll be able to see each of you on September the 25th. Thank you for coming. Have a great weekend, and be safe and hydrate and be blessed.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.